Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. We've got cause for celebration as we have another victory in another lawsuit. Here today with us to talk about it, we have Chuck Michel, who is senior partner at Michel and Associates and the volunteer president of CRPA. Chuck, how the heck are you?
It's a good day for the Second Amendment and freedom.
You bet it is. But before we get into this, please be sure and like, share, and subscribe to these videos. We're catching on, and we've almost achieved our goal. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. You can help us get there by sharing, liking, and subscribing to these videos. We want to get this info out to as many people as we possibly can, and it certainly helps with the algorithm. So, sorry for the for the delay here, Chuck. But let's dig into this. So we got a victory on Bolin v. Bonta, which was CRPA's challenge to the handgun roster in California. Can you walk us through this, tell us about it, and tell us how it's going to affect California going forward?
Sure. Well, remember the handgun, the so-called Unsafe Handgun Act was passed a couple of decades ago, and it started out as a drop test and some manufacturing standards tests, which manufacturers pretty much do themselves anyway. So it didn't knock a lot of guns off the list initially, but then the DOJ got tightened up the regulations, kept making it harder and harder to get on the list. And if you dropped off the list, you couldn't get back on. They didn't send out bills so that people didn't necessarily know. Manufacturers didn't know if they were going to fall off the list. So it was a big headache to try and get all the manufacturers' different models on the list. But even that they got through most of that. But then they added the politicians who would just as soon ban all handguns. And I think that part of this law was designed to do just that, added requirements for a loaded chamber indicator, a magazine disconnect lock safety, and then a microstamping requirement. And manufacturers just couldn't incorporate all of that into their firearms, especially the microstamping requirement, which is essentially impossible. Even the inventor of that technology has said that it's not, the time has not come, it is premature, and it's not reliable, and it's easily defeatable. I mean, you can scrape off the microstamping imprint with a nail file so that it defeats the purpose of trying to imprint a cartridge shell with some kind of a number. So that resulted in the number of handgun models being available for sale in California dropping by thousands and thousands of models. So people have been deprived of the ability to choose a handgun that's appropriate for their individualized needs for a long, long time now. There used to be thousands of models that you could choose from. It really came down to about 200 most recently. And all of those models were older models that were grandfathered in. You couldn't get any of the latest, greatest, and safest models onto the roster of handguns approved for sale in California unless it had microstamping, and nobody had microstamping. So they tried everything they could, the legislature and the politicians tried everything they could to force people to, basically they would have to retool their entire assembly line to build microstamping into their manufacturing process. But none of that worked. So at the end of the day, we were left, California gun owners, or those who want to choose to own a gun for sport or defend their family, were left with a very, very minor selection of older models to choose from. I mean, imagine Cuba, where you're driving cars from the 50s, because you can't get the new cars down there. That's kind of how it was with these handguns. They're all older models. If a manufacturer even added one twist to a spring, that was considered a new model. They had to get it reapproved, and unless it had microstamping, they couldn't get it on. So the list was just older models. So CRPA challenged that restriction in federal district court based on the Bruin ruling, the Second Amendment test that's now required under the Bruin case from the United States Supreme Court last June. And today we got a fantastic ruling that says that the loaded chamber indicator, the microstamping, and the magazine disconnect requirements are unconstitutional. They violate the Second Amendment, and the court issued a preliminary injunction to ban enforcement of those aspects of the law.
So does that then mean we are going to start seeing the importation of newer firearms?
Not yet. Eventually, what we hope is that those thousands of different models, the latest, greatest, and safest, will be back available for sale in California. But the district court judge knew that the state would appeal his ruling, and he gave them 14 days to file a request with the Ninth Circuit to stay the case while it's on appeal. And that's what they're going to do. And the Ninth Circuit is going to stay it. I mean, we'll oppose it, but the Ninth Circuit is almost certainly going to stay it to maintain the status quo while they decide the case on appeal. So the fight's not over, but boy, it's a home run in the first inning here. We just got to play the game all the way out. The state is going scorched earth on this. This is a centerpiece of the gun ban lobby's campaign and their list of gun laws that they want, many of which they have in California, to make firearms ownership difficult and expensive and limited because they don't like the gun culture. This was part of their effort to have less people choosing to own firearms for sport or to defend their family. So they will fight this all the way through. The Ninth Circuit now is not the same Ninth Circuit that it used to be. It's about a 50-50 split between Democratic and Republican judges appointed by Democrat or Republican presidents. But so we have a very good chance of winning there, particularly because I think some of those Democratic judges are going to see that this law fails the Bruin test. There is no historical analog back in 1791 for microstamping or anything like it. The state they didn't even have serial numbers back then. So
Right.
I think the state's going to have a hard time winning, but they're going to give it their all. They will pull in experts and history experts and all their best and brightest lawyers to fight us on appeal. So we can win as long as CRPA supporters stick with us and help us get the war chest together to fight this fight on appeal and possibly at the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, and fight on we shall. So it sounds like what you're saying is this preliminary injunction was the decision that we wanted. We got a 14-day window where that injunction is stayed to see if it gets appealed to the Ninth Circuit, which we assume that it will be. While it's being litigated in the Ninth Circuit, you're saying the law will still be enforced so that there won't be an influx of firearms coming into California while it continues to be litigated there. Is that about where it's at?
Yes, that's correct. The law right now, things are the same, and I fully expect the state will file their appeal probably this week, right, and then ask the Ninth Circuit to stay this ruling at the same time. And I expect the Ninth Circuit's going to grant that request because that's pretty much standard procedure when you have a law that's been on the books for a long time. They're not going to invalidate it while they consider whether or not it's constitutional. They'll maintain the status quo, and that's pretty typical. So we won't see the models coming into the state for a while as it makes its way through appeal. But the manufacturers have all been made aware of this already. They are already, they've been waiting for years. They're very anxious to get their products on the market in California. This is a very big market for firearms, and they want their product to be in the display cases so that people can choose from them. And it's about time. I mean, people have been very, very severely limited in their ability to choose a gun that's right for them, ergonomically or with the right sights or the right grips or all the different things that go into choosing a gun that's right for you, the right caliber. And so CRPA and my lawyers are very hopeful and believe that we can win on appeal and strike this thing down once and for all.
I'm sure, and that kind of goes into another question that I wanted to ask and get your take on is really just the gravity of a decision like this and overall winning this case, what it would do for California, how much government infringement it would actually undo. You mentioned the chamber loader indicator, you mentioned the magazine detachable part as well as the microstamping. And the decision was written pretty well. I mean, you know, we've seen the last couple of big decisions come from Benitez, 80 page decisions. This wasn't necessarily that long, but it was of similar fashion where he really seemed to dig into the heart of the Constitution and the Bruin decision. He was pretty specific just in talking about laying out the facts. And those facts are in 2007, was it, when they, you know, put the micro-stamping piece in the Unsafe Handgun Act. Since then, there have been no new firearms on that roster. Previous to that, with the chamber loader indicator and the magazine detachable mechanism, I think it was something like, 23 or 32 on the roster. The other 800 firearms are grandfathered in and also deemed technically unsafe by California. So
even though law enforcement's allowed to buy them,
right?
So that's always been the irony of this. They call these guns unsafe, which is just another buzzword. It's a way that they can condemn classified a group of firearms. They can demonize it, call them unsafe, call them assault weapons, call them large capacity magazines. The nomenclature is very politicized. This had nothing to do with safety. It really never had much to do with safety at all. And any gun that was considered that didn't pass the tests, the police could still buy. So why are they letting police buy unsafe handguns? This judge got it. He saw that what this law was, saw through the safety claims, and ruled in our favor. And so this is a fantastic, big win. Not just because it gets rid of the roster eventually, but also because this judge is one of the first judges, maybe the first judge in California, to apply the new Bruin test that came out of the Supreme Court in June of last year, which is you look for historical analogs to try and justify a ban on particular firearms, and there aren't any. These guns are in common use. All these different model of handguns are in common use throughout the country, just not in California because they've been banned. So the public's preference for these firearms is pretty obvious, these particular firearms, because everybody has a different, we all want a different type, slightly different or more different type of handgun based on our circumstances.
Or say you're left-handed.
Gun? Is it a carry gun? Is it a bedside drawer gun? Is it a target range gun? And how big is your hand? How good are your eyes? All the different things that they can change on these handguns to make them particularly suited for an individual's circumstances and physique. All those choices were eliminated.
Well, and you hit there previously on what my last question was really going to be. The Unsafe Handgun Act is a big thing. It's been added to over the years. These three primary components of it, we just got stricken down. Is there an Unsafe Handgun Act after this lawsuit?
There will probably still be. Well, there is another lawsuit challenging the rest of it, but I think that it's harder to strike down like a drop test requirement or something like that. That's a manufacturing standard, and there has been some historical laws or regulations that required guns to be made or to pass certain tests and be made. They didn't want to have a thin barrel that would explode and that kind of thing. But it was very basic stuff that was designed to make sure that a gun was manufactured at a level of quality that it was not going to hurt the user. That wasn't the case with magazine disconnect or loaded chamber indicator or microstamping. That was designed to make it impossible to get a handgun on the roster so you couldn't sell it in the state. Because again, there's lots of politicians out there who would like to ban handguns and ban all guns, but in particular like to ban handguns from civilians completely.
Well, speaking of politicians, I was on the phone with our legislative director, Rick Travis, the other day, and he was talking about all the spot bills that they've got there in Sacramento. So Maybe after this decision, we can see a couple of those spot bills turn into something relating to banning handguns in California. But that's all for the future. Chuck, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us some explanation on this. We've got some other lawsuits to look forward to. Also, we still have Rhodey and Duncan in front of Judge Benitez.
Any day now, we expect a decision in the CRPA's Rhodey case challenging the ammunition sales background check and ban on internet sales, challenging the standard capacity magazine ban. There's another case challenging the so-called assault weapon ban. And then there's a fourth case challenging the ban on billy clubs. All of those are fully briefed. They're in front of Judge Benitez. He's just writing his opinions. And whenever he finishes, he will release those. And I think, we're going to have some more W's in our column.
I think so too, and it just goes to show I'm very appreciative of you coming on. We look forward to talking about those other lawsuits with you, Chuck. Thank you again for being with us today.
My pleasure, guys.
And I want to thank all of you for continuing to support our work here at CRPA and CRPA TV. I'll say it again because you just simply can't say it enough. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you like winning lawsuits, if you like taking your rights back, show us in the likes and the subscriptions, and show us in the comment section. Leave a comment and show us how you're participating in this fight. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.